The first thing that shattered the calm of that golden morning was the sight of a frail old gatekeeper being shoved aside by luxury cars rolling into the estate like they owned the earth itself. His clothes were worn, his hands rough, his back slightly bent, yet his eyes carried a depth that didn't match his appearance. No one noticed the quiet dignity with which he straightened himself, except fate. What no one knew was that this poor gatekeeper was, in truth, the billionaire owner of everything they stood on, and he had come that day to test a woman who was about to become family. What happened next would leave him standing alone behind the iron gates, tears blurring his vision, questioning not just her heart, but the future of his own son. If you believe stories like this can change hearts, remind us of the power of kindness, and show why second chances matter, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more real emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. The estate belonged to Arun Malhotra, a self-made billionaire whose name commanded respect in boardrooms across continents. He had built his empire from nothing, surviving hunger, humiliation, and nights spent sleeping on factory floors. Wealth had come later, but humility had never left him. His only weakness was his son, Rohan, the center of his world and the reason every sacrifice had been worth it. Rohan had grown up surrounded by comfort, yet Arun had tried his best to raise him with values stronger than money. Now Rohan was engaged to a woman named Natasha, elegant, educated, and from a well-connected family. On paper, she was perfect. But something in Arun's heart remained unsettled, a quiet fear that the world's shine had blinded his son to something essential. Arun had learned long ago that true character revealed itself not under chandeliers, but in shadows, not when people gained something, but when they believed there was nothing to gain. So he made a decision that shocked even his closest aide. On the day Natasha was to visit the estate for a private family gathering, Arun would disguise himself as a poor gatekeeper. He dressed in faded clothes, slipped on cracked sandals, smeared a little dust on his hands, and stood at the massive iron gate where servants usually worked. He told no one, not his son, not the staff. He wanted truth, raw and unfiltered. As luxury cars began arriving, Arun watched faces carefully. Some guests ignored him entirely, some barely acknowledged his presence, as if poverty itself were contagious. He accepted this quietly, reminding himself of his own past, of how often he had been invisible once. Then Natasha's car arrived, sleek and polished, stopping abruptly at the gate. Arun stepped forward, performing the role he had chosen, raising his hand gently to signal where to park. What followed was not loud or dramatic, but it cut deeper than shouting ever could. Natasha's expression tightened the moment she noticed him. Her eyes skimmed over his clothes, his posture, his hands, and something hardened within her. She gestured impatiently, clearly annoyed that someone like him was even near her car. Arun moved slower than expected, deliberately fumbling with the gate latch. Time stretched. Every second felt heavy. Her frustration grew visible, not because of delay, but because she believed delay from someone poor was an insult to her importance. Arun felt a familiar ache in his chest. He had seen this look before, decades ago, directed at himself. The look that said, "You are less." He continued silently, watching carefully, hoping perhaps, foolishly, for a flicker of kindness, a moment of patience, anything that would soften the scene. Instead, what he saw was dismissal. Natasha waved him off and motioned for someone else, as if he were an inconvenience rather than a human being. When the gate finally opened, she passed through, without a backward glance. No thank you, no acknowledgement, just cold indifference. Arun stood there long after her car disappeared down the driveway, his hands trembling slightly. This alone hurt, but it was not yet enough to break him. He reminded himself that first impressions could be misleading. He stayed at his post, waiting. Inside the estate, the gathering unfolded with elegance. Laughter echoed through marble halls, glasses clinked, and Natasha moved gracefully among guests, charming, smiling, perfectly composed. Rohan looked at her with pride, convinced he had chosen well. Arun, still in disguise, wandered near the service areas, observing from a distance. Again and again, small moments unfolded. Natasha spoke warmly to those she believed mattered. Her smile faded when addressing staff. Orders were given sharply, corrections were made publicly. Arun watched servants shrink slightly under her gaze, the same servants who had raised his son like family. With every passing hour, something inside Arun began to crumble. He remembered teaching Rohan as a boy to greet drivers, to thank cleaners, to respect everyone. He had believed those lessons had taken root. Now he wondered where he had failed, or whether love had simply blinded his son. The final moment came unexpectedly. One of the elderly gardeners stumbled near the terrace, dropping a tray of glasses. The sound drew attention. The man froze, fear written across his face. Natasha's reaction was immediate and sharp, not with words, but with a look of pure irritation, as though the old man's existence had ruined her perfect afternoon. Arun felt something snap. This was no longer a test, it was a revelation. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and guests prepared to leave, Arun shed his disguise. He changed quietly, straightened his posture, and walked into the main hall as himself. Conversations died mid-sentence. Natasha turned, her confident smile ready, then froze. Recognition struck her face like thunder. The poor gatekeeper, the billionaire father, the same man. The silence was unbearable. Arun looked at her, not with anger, but with deep sorrow. Years of struggle, values forged in fire, all seemed suddenly fragile. He saw panic flicker across her features, followed by forced composure. But it was too late. The truth had already spoken louder than words. Arun did not raise his voice. He did not humiliate her. His disappointment was quiet, and that made it devastating. He explained, calmly and clearly, why he had done what he did. He spoke of respect, of dignity, of how wealth meant nothing if it crushed compassion. As he spoke, his voice wavered, not from weakness, but from heartbreak. Tears filled his eyes, not because of her alone, but because his son stood there, stunned, realizing for the first time that love without values could be dangerous. Rohan's world shifted in that moment. Memories flooded back of his father's lessons, of simple meals shared with workers, of humility modeled daily. He saw the contrast clearly now. Natasha, faced with her reflection, tried to justify herself, but the damage was done. Arun did not ask his son to make a decision. He didn't need to. Truth has a way of deciding for us. That night, after the guests had gone and the estate fell silent, Arun stood alone by the gate once more, this time as himself. The iron bars gleamed under the moonlight. He wept quietly, not for what he had lost, but for what he had nearly allowed into his family. His tears were not of anger, but of relief mixed with pain. He had protected his son, but at a cost. Rohan joined him there, no longer the confident groom-to-be, but a son humbled by truth. Without words, he understood what his father had done out of love. The engagement was quietly called off in the days that followed. There was no scandal, no drama, just a painful but necessary ending. Life moved on, slower at first. The house felt different. Lighter in some ways, heavier in others. Arun returned to his routines, but something inside him had changed too. He realized that tests like these, painful as they are, save futures. Weeks later, Rohan began volunteering with his father's foundation, working directly with people he had once overlooked. The lessons took root again, deeper this time. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something stir inside your heart, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring stories like this to life. Before the ending, we have a special request for you. Comment below with one word that this story made you feel: hope, sadness, relief, or faith. We read every comment, and your words matter more than you know. In the end, Arun learned that wealth could build empires, but only values could protect legacies. And somewhere beyond the gates, a father and son found each other again. Not through money, but through truth, humility, and the quiet power of kindness.